I'm
Okay.
checking here. We are now. Yeah.
Right. Well, we're now moving on to our second panel session, which is going to cover how to achieve PPP in Turkey before and after COVID. Again, we've got a very distinguished panel, lots of knowledge and insight to share. Klaus Jurgens is going to moderate this panel, a well-known figure on our events, extremely knowledgeable. So, if I could ask you, Klaus, just to introduce our panel. Klaus Jurgens is going to moderate this panel, a well-known figure on our events, extremely knowledgeable. So,
yes, thank you, Chris, very much. I know we have this 10 or 15-second time delay, I believe. Hello, and a very good mid-morning to you all. Welcome to our panel, How to Achieve PPP in Turkey Before and, of course, in particular, after COVID-19. May I first of all introduce our distinguished speakers. Gunay Gokcen will join us very shortly. She is Meridiam's Development Director for Turkey with over 15 years of PPP experience, and she contributed to the planning, developing and financing of more than 10 hospital PPPs. She will join us shortly. Idil Gursel is the Associate Director for Municipal and Environment Infrastructure at the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. Of course, the EBRD basically doesn't need an introduction, but I think Idil combines an amazing array of bank, finance, and Turkey experience. And we have Pietro Crescini, welcome to you too, the Director at Sumitomo Mitsui Banking Corporation. And since I mentioned a few years with the other two distinguished speakers, he fulfills this role, if I'm not wrong, for the past 7 years after a total of 14 years, if I studied your CV correctly, and an expert in all things project finance. Now, me as the moderator basically have nothing to contribute, because with such a panel, I should better immediately head to the actual topics. Now, I only want to say 1 or 2 brief sentences. Some of us have met, of course, before at similar events, and you may recall that PPP is indeed a topic I'm very happy to do research about, managed actually to write about quite a number of times. PPP are so important in Turkey, in the healthcare sector, in other sectors too. Now, of course, COVID-19, and this is, I think, where our panel will exactly kick off in a minute. Now, redefining risk assessment with a view to PPP, one could ask from a journalistic viewpoint, are PPP at risk due to a liquidity situation? Now, I don't want to go much deeper into the topic. We have our expert panels, and I had actually planned to reverse now the alphabetical order. And Pietro, if you would agree by kicking off perhaps what we said yesterday as well, the wider cross-border dimension when it comes to future PPP in general, both in the UK, globally, and Turkey, and then perhaps approach the more detailed questions. Would that suit you? The floor is all yours, Pietro.
Of course. Thank you, and good morning all. Thank you very much. So yes, SMBC is a very large PF bank, one of the largest in the world. We have, since March, we've done a lot of analysis and stress testing on whether PPP was a viable proposition in the COVID area. And after some initial nervousness, the overall conclusion is that actually it's quite resilient to the sector. We've noticed across Europe the fact that the public sector has been very open and very transparent in saying this is an unprecedented situation. How can we maintain viable for the longer term hospitals, schools, or even leisure centers where there was some demand risk, and therefore it was on the on the shoulders of the private sector to actually run these facilities. But in general terms, we've seen that there's been some changes, some due to COVID, due to safety, due to some areas of hospitals, for example, that had to be refurbished or used for the emergency. But in general, it's like a PPP means a public-private partnership, and it's been a very much a hands-on approach from, you know, my experience of over, I think in our book we've got 300 PPPs project across Europe and the EMEA region, where everyone hands-on and said, what is the issue here? How can we keep on doing what we do? For example, hospital queue patients, or even opening emergency areas, but how can we keep on having the private sector involved, and even in the longer term when this crisis will hopefully be over soon.
Okay, thank you very much. This is, I think, the perfect, rather promising outlook. So you acknowledge, of course, the crisis and safety and other issues, but you probably hint at it can all be overcome. May we move on to Idil, if I may? Now, of course, in a frank manner, you represent the public money side, the bank side, the EBRD side. And of course, the EBRD is very well known in Turkey and much welcome. I had the pleasure to attend one of your general annual meetings a short while ago. Now, if you like to continue what Pietro just hinted at, the general outlook, including the liquidity and any other matters you would like to go into it.
Yes, thank you very much. When Pietro gave a bigger picture from maybe global environment, let me go into Turkey specific. Majority of the late projects have been financed based on availability payment schemes in Turkey. Especially the motorways and hospital PPPs are backed by the government revenue guarantees. So we have observed that these schemes proved to be resilient during the times of crisis as well. The government was prompt in payments. The escalation formulas were done, protecting lenders, sponsors, and mostly not violating the project agreement terms. So we also conclude that PPPs remain to be resilient despite the crisis. Of course, some sectors globally have been affected much more than the other sectors. Take airports, where the customer numbers decreased 90%. In international traffic numbers decreased 95–97%. So these are indeed, and if there is no availability payment scheme behind, those assets have been much more severely affected. But when you look at the hospital PPP mechanism, it brings the sponsors and the state and the lenders to the same side. And the global pandemic is a force majeure. So having the assets shut down for a period of 2 months, 2.5 months, is not avoidable. So we believe the assets that have been severely impacted and not even protected contractually can also have also room to really sit together and try to solve the problems without really parking the risk to just one side. And we believe that we will see further discussions between the parties, take it state and the sponsors, and maybe even lenders, for the assets under serious stress. So, looking at the past PPPs we have financed, we have always financed assets that create value for money for the state. The PPP method brought in value for money for the government, and due to the speed of delivery and efficiencies of these projects. So we believe going forward, PP value for money assessment will be even more critical because there is a scarce liquidity in all markets. All governments are focusing on their own market and also assessing their priorities. And also it's not only the infrastructure, but also helping individuals, SMEs, injecting liquidity to banks, tax reliefs. That's what we are observing in Turkey. The PPP program, I think, may continue, but maybe with decreasing speed. I'm sure we'll touch base on that in a bit. But overall, we were happy with the performance here in Turkey.
Wow, I am impressed. I mean, in a nice way. So two rather, well, fair, frank, but nevertheless optimistic outlooks that things will at some point continue in a good way, in a successful way. Now, while we're still, if I see my screen correctly, wait for Gunay Hanım, may I take then the opportunity, what we briefly discussed yesterday, and just ask a typical journalist question. Now, PPP, are we talking in the near to mid-term future about domestic Turkish PPP or cross-border PPP? Pietro, may I go back to you?
Sure. That's a good question, actually. So the history of PPP in Turkey, and Idil and Gunay played a major role in it, has been that the quality of the sponsors, the quality of the framework, of the regulatory framework, the quality of the FX mechanism, and the capability of developing infrastructure, construction companies actually doing their job, and the pipeline in also is very strong. So you've seen that, you know, we finance projects with the Japanese sponsors, with the French sponsors, with the Turkish sponsors, and with Korean sponsors in other sectors as well. So there is a lot of interest in this. Turkey has always shown a lot of interest from foreign direct investment. It's interesting to know that you know, the multilaterals like EBRD, IFC, and JBIC and so on have all a strong presence in Turkey and a growing in presence in Turkey. So it is the perfect, and the fact that there's a pipeline. So actually the government is willing to proceed with this method to develop infrastructure, well-needed infrastructure. Unfortunately, I think that one of the key points, and I think it's well known to others, than when we started, when we did our first project with Idil, it was back in 2016. Turkey was investment grade. Now, you know, it is 5 levels below investment grade. I think that is the main concern that drives the fact that the you know, banks would have reached their limits quite soon. They would need more ECA coverage. They would need more intervention of multilaterals, and clearly then the appetite from international investors and banks it lowers, which is, I would say, very unfortunate, because there's so much to do, and things that have been happened in Turkey have been actually, you know, I would say, well above expectation to any player in the market. So how can we break this sort of conundrum? I think that's the main point.
Well, if I may move on straight again to Idil, I've just while preparing saw that your bank made out a rather voluminous loan to one of Turkey's big banks, and why not mention it? I mean, it's all in the news. It was to Ich Bankers, and I think you support, of course, many other banks. Do I understand this correctly, that the banks should use these extra facilities not only to stimulate the economy, but perhaps to go in particular into PPP via providing liquidity to the private sector to actually get going more strongly now during hopefully what is soon the end of COVID-19? Or are these principal projects you would have run anyhow?
The bank announced a solidarity package early in the crisis in May, and then increased the solidarity package up to 4 billion euros in May, which was targeting to help alleviate the effects of the COVID. So as part of this package in Turkey, we have provided around 450 million euros of financing. And for us, the fastest way is to deliver it through local banks, and then make it conditional to be channeled to the private sector. We also continue our existing projects. We didn't give up or delist our existing projects. We continue our existing projects. But of course, COVID-19 brought some challenges to project preparation. Under these conditions, technical assessments, environmental assessments are now done remotely. And sometimes there are delays arising from sponsors or the state side just because priorities are changing. For infrastructure, we wanted to look at different sides by supporting municipalities or by supporting the states. And we are working on different projects just to target COVID. For example, we are working with Ministry of Treasury Finance for a medical equipment support facility together with AIB. And we are working on some working capital lines with private companies, which was the main heading of our solidarity package. We also, if I would like to just touch base on a few things that Pietro mentioned. We see some while we see the government is still eager to carry out a PPP program, I think the COVID have affected the way the government also looking at these transactions. In hospital PPPs, we have seen the last 9 PPP tenders have been switched to public procurement method. This shows that the government is able to adjust to the changing conditions, scarcity of liquidity, and also maybe the effect of rating downgrades in this scarce liquidity environment. Also, in other sectors, we see the government is also continuing public tenders for transport projects. They are much more starting EPC contracts or EPCF type of tenders, where they are trying to bring in tight financing to the projects. So we cannot say that the government gave up on PPPs, because this is an important financing method for fast delivery, and Turkey needs fast delivery. But we also see government is using their other options, using their own balance sheet to realize projects.
Thank you very much. I will come back to that point straight away. Now, I'm not sure whether our esteemed speaker will make it, so I keep that question for the last minutes before I hope the audience has some questions. Now, let me play moderator's devil's advocate. Idil, you made a wonderful point, if I may comment on that. Now, governments seem to go into the public tendering for the time being, perhaps a little bit more so than full-fledged PPP. Now, some argue already, and it's heavily debated in the media, of course, how far should governments during a pandemic actually use their interventionist powers? Some argue even, is capitalism, are free functioning market economies at risks if governments step in to stimulate the economy unless the private sector can do it? Now, Pietro, this debate about the governments doing the public tendering approach to stimulate the economy with billions of funds, and of course not only in Turkey, from a bank's perspective, from the private sector, is this, in addition to your rather optimistic outlook, is it promising or is it dangerous?
No, I think it's quite promising. I think Idil said something very interesting, that in Turkey, the government, as I mentioned, is quite sophisticated, and there's noticed that, you know, whether it's the current environment and the liquidity available for commercial banks to invest in Turkey, I said, okay, how can we keep on delivering infrastructure? And yeah, it is either an EPCF, for example, is an example. EPCF means that it's a standard it's a standard procurement, but we add also other construction. We also add the financing, and this you know, can bring in ECAs, can bring in different multilaterals. So it is quite a sophisticated and clever way to address the need to build more infrastructure. So in general terms, I think all banks who do this job are hungry for more projects. There is no, you know, around EMEA, the pipeline is scarce, whilst in Turkey is very strong. In Turkey, there are very good developers and that actually can deliver. So I would say that it is, you know, a positive reaction that the government puts extra effort to keep a successful completion of PPPs, and Turkey is a good example, and it does it in quite difficult circumstances, you know, but it's, you know, that's where we are, and I think it's a very positive sign.
Thank you very much. Now, sometimes moderators have to take a look at the watch. I think by now it seems certain that our third speaker, unfortunately, will not make it. Now, what I would suggest then for the final 15 minutes, I remember from a past meeting that PPP are actually a very good business card, so to speak, for an economy. And we spoke a lot about Turkey, but of course the Invest in Turkey forum originally scheduled that we all meet in London, but I want to take this opportunity to say thanks to the hosts and organizers to setting up this virtual event. It's a timely choice, and it's amazing how it all works, and that we can meet and talk before we meet face to face again. Now, talk about success stories. I followed very closely two of the hospital projects. I talk about Gaziantep and Bilkent, and still amazed by numbers, by figures, by potential patient turnover, accident and emergency, in and out, stationary, ambulance. I mean, amazing. Now, regional world leader, one might say, without being, I don't want to be too much PR now. Now, what made the hospital sector so successful from the PPP dimension? Was it the topic? Was it the need? Was it the subject? Was it simply a coincidence, or was it honestly based on a very, very clever strategy? Idil, may I come back to you first, perhaps?
So first of all, it was the right project, because Turkish hospital infrastructure needed an upgrade. It severely needed an upgrade. So, and needed the upgrade at this scale, really. So I think it was the correct method to do it, because fast delivery was aim. And secondly, I think the government have addressed all the risks in order to bring and de-risk the SPV in the correct way that a perfect project financing can work. And this brought in all types of investors. Roughly 60–70% of the, say, 9 billion euros of investments are financed by foreign institutions. And the program also attracted international investors that brought in the know-how into this sector. I think COVID proved that adding capacity to the healthcare system doesn't harm, especially in these environments. We did not foresee COVID when we were financing those hospitals. And while some sectors suffered from loss of users, it does the opposite in the case of hospitals. But even before COVID, the occupancy rates were so high. So there was a real need, really, and bankability of the contracts, states' will to make these contracts that to this level was also another factor.
Thank you very much. Pietro, before we try to give the floor to the audience, hopefully there are some questions. Anything you would like to add? Because I know you are
absolutely. So absolutely, yes. I think in 3 words, I think the success of the PPP program in hospital was down to Idil and myself. But I'm just joking. I'm just joking. But yeah, so there was a lot of effort there, and I think what Idil is saying is exactly right. So there was a very large involvement of foreign investors. There was a very large involvement of Turkish capabilities of developing infrastructure. There was a very welcomed and hands-on approach by the public authority, and it was you know, for 4 years has kept on going. I worked on some of the largest hospitals in the world, so did Idil. So we're very proud of what we've done, and I, you know, I cherish the day where actually I can go to, whether seeing Adana built or Bursa that we work together, or you know, the now called Başakşehir Pine and Sakura hospital in Istanbul, which had you know, was financed by Japanese investors, and so, you know, very proud of what we've done.
Thank you very much. Well, I think if I understood our host, Emine Hanım, correctly, and Chris, now if there are questions from the audience, hopefully, I would not see them, but yes, Chris, how do you go about questions from the audience?
If you go to stage, I think on the chat, you may see some questions there. I'm just taking a look. But yeah, 5 minutes ago. Yeah, they seem to be answered mostly, but whether Emine's got some questions there, I'm not sure. But I mean, just you know, if I can, you know, just add something. I mean, as far as UK is concerned, I mean, UK Export Finance, you know, have also been very interested in these PPP projects, and there's I think there's one that's actually, you know, they've got off the ground, but I think just worth mentioning that, you know, when it comes to as you mentioned, Klaus, earlier, is it just Turkey or is it regional? And obviously UKEF have a broader scope like EBRD. I mean, they're looking at both region and Turkey, and any company, Turkish company that's doing projects, particularly PPP projects in healthcare, in the region, as long as it's a Turkish company, I think you know the model that they practice. So they're obviously active in the mix as well. So I just thought I'd add that to it, and it just goes to show what the opportunity is. You know, given the amount of interest that's being shown, you know, across Europe and in other countries as well, when it comes to investing in these PPP projects, that seems to have worked extremely well. Okay, so I think we are getting to the end. Any further comments that anybody would like to make? We do. we do have a new entrant.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we've come to the end of the session, but I mean,
which is fine. Which is fine. Gunay is here. Finally, we managed it.
Sorry about it. I apologize for it. Actually,
can we give Gunay a few minutes just to?
Yeah, we have enough time. We've got a break after that, so which is okay. You know, you can continue like 10 minutes. Finally, yeah.
Sorry about it. I apologize for it. Actually,
can we give Gunay a few minutes just to?
Yeah, we have enough time. We've got a break after that, so which is okay. You know, you can continue like 10 minutes. Finally, yeah. I think Gunay maybe close another browser or iPhone because it's just okay, she closed everything. I guess
we do our best with technology, but it doesn't always.
Exactly.
as I mentioned in my opening address, that we're all getting used to this new technology world, and we've all been doing Zooms and Teams and whatever else platforms that are available to us, but it does become frustrating when it doesn't actually work in the way you want it to work. I was saying to Robin Jabrin at the beginning, because I couldn't connect in the beginning, and he had to step in and do his own introduction, which he did extremely well. And I'm just going back and thinking, well, maybe I should have studied computer science instead of something else. Maybe I've been able to deal with all these issues going forward. But it's just interesting how these things work and how they don't work. I'm taking it. You're all in Turkey, yeah? Idil? Pietro? Are you in Turkey?
Yes, I am.
I'm actually in London.
All right, okay. Well, I'm in Istanbul, isolated here for the last 5 months, unable to, not unable, I can if I really want to get back to UK, but I'm not inclined to go to airports and get on airplanes at the moment. Yeah. So we wait for Gunay, or should we continue?
Let me check one more time and then we can finish soon, actually, because we got he's here.
There I am. Sorry about it. It's a technical problem and it doesn't allow me to get into. I apologize to everyone. I think it's been a great session, though.
Yeah. So
definitely been a really hot topic. And if you'd like to give us your view very quickly on how you see the opportunities for PPP going forward.
Yeah, in addition to actually, I think we are all the same page. In addition to causing a global health crisis, coronavirus has been impacting this economy seriously. It's obvious that, and especially in terms of the PPP sector in Turkey, if we divide it on the demand-based and availability-based projects, in terms of demand-based projects, mostly government is actually giving minimum guarantee to the projects, and it is in a short term. Still losing the user for that projects as well. Especially when you look at the road projects and the motorway projects, they are all demand on the base of the demand. Impact on the availability payment-based project is clearly less in a short term. However, even PPPs that receive revenue through availability payments might suffer, result in declining tax revenues, and there could be some strain on the budget. However, as we have the hospital based on the availability payments in Turkey, Turkey has a good track record for making payments and fiscal improvement. So we don't expect big issue on the availability-based projects. That's all that's as a approach to that. And I heard that in some point that it was discussed our PPP hospital project. I don't know if it might be good to mention that we have 4 hospitals in Turkey: Adana, Yozgat, Elazığ, Bursa, and efficiently during this pandemic, fully serving the community.
and we are the largest investor in that PPP projects. And for the new project, actually, sorry about it, I'm just catching up the time. For the new project, actually, what we are looking, and I think for all the investor and the lenders, it's a feasibility, affordability, essentiality, and sustainability is a key principle for all these projects for the future financing. And failure is the most important part. How the governments and private sector is handling this crisis. I think it's important that it's going to be an important test for public and private sector, how they deal with the project during this crisis. This will allow for the new or for the continuing PPPs.
Thank you, Gunay. I mean, we have another session to go to, but I'm sure we can spend a bit more time if we need to. But
we're gonna have a break half an hour. Sorry, sorry to interrupt you. We're gonna have a break half an hour, then we will have another session. So that's why that we can continue if you like. 5 minutes more if Gunay Hanım.
Yeah.
Is up.
Yeah. I mean, if there are any further comments, I mean, I've got a question. I mean, given the crisis, I mean, everybody's more aware of their health. I mean, it's become the #1 priority for everybody, and around the world. So demand, not just in Turkey, but pretty much everywhere, is going to increase. And lots of healthcare services that are provided in all the countries around the world are going to have to invest a lot more in meeting that demand, and also realizing the expectation of their population, because we've seen lots of incidences. We've seen the good and the bad of how governments have handled this situation. I have to say, UK's not done a terribly good job, and the US even worse. But I mean, we're seeing now the results of some mismanagement, and expectations are going to continue to rise, and people will expect from their respective governments a far better service than probably they've been getting during the COVID crisis. I mean, Turkey has done reasonably well, obviously, because they've had the capacity, and because of the investment in PPP. That's enabled them to keep pretty much things under control. But it will be interesting post-COVID just how our respective governments actually deal with the demand, and I'm sure will come, and how they will enhance the services available to people once we've got through it, because people will be very concerned about the level of quality of service and the transparency within governments as to how they're handling these things. Okay, I made my point. Any other comments you'd like to make? Idil, Pietro? No?
Yeah, I think especially in moments like this, we know the quality infrastructure development has project livelihoods, and very future for the countries. That's all I can say.
Okay, EMEA, I think we've come to the end of this session. So we're now moving on to a networking session, and are we going to open that up now?
I can stop it, soon. Yeah. So I'm gonna finish it now, and then we're gonna have a break, half an hour break, and we can go to networking if you like, and we're gonna start the game at 12 UK time. So
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And apologize
again. So much. Thank you.
And Jurgen, wherever he is, we seem to have lost him somewhere. But thanks to all of you. Thanks to all of you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.